Hi, this is 100 Films and Other Stuff. At 90 is Alfred Hitchcock's The 39 Steps. Be warned, there are spoilers ahead. Alfred Hitchcock casts a very long and round shadow over the film world. He's indirectly and directly responsible for so much of what we see in cinema today, it's quite difficult to comprehend. But I'll briefly attempt to elucidate. The MacGuffin. A word you may have heard of is arguably his most famous point of influence. The term MacGuffin was coined by screenwriter Angus MacPhail, but Hitchcock popularised it. A MacGuffin, more commonly used in action and suspense movies, is something that drives a film's story forward and is vital to the plot of the story and to the characters. However, it's not necessarily important to the audience. Examples are many and varied, but according to Hitchcock, they are something like the contents of the briefcase in Ronin, which somehow solves the Northern Ireland conflict, the Maltese Falcon in the Maltese Falcon, which is actually a fake, or the Holy Grail in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which they never actually find. Here's Hitchcock explaining what a MacGuffin is.
Someone asked, what is a MacGuffin? And it's described in a scene in an English train going to Scotland, and one man says to the other opposite him, he said, "What's that package above your head there?" And the other man said, "Oh, that's a MacGuffin." He said, "Well, what is a MacGuffin?" He said, "Well, it's an apparatus for trapping lions in the Scottish Highlands." The man said, "But there are no lions in the Scottish Highlands." He said, "Then that's no MacGuffin."
A MacGuffin can also be a character like Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now or Private Ryan in Saving Private Ryan. But this is where we move away from Hitchcock's take on a MacGuffin and move into a different school of thought, which states that a MacGuffin can be something the audience cares about. According to George Lucas, R2-D2 was the MacGuffin in Star Wars, and I think it's safe to say that the audience cared about R2-D2 a lot. But Hitchcock would probably say,
"Then that's no MacGuffin."
For me, the MacGuffin in Star Wars are the Death Star plans from Rogue One. But Hitchcock also constantly pushed film's visual and narrative boundaries. Whether it be killing off the lead protagonist in the first 30 minutes of a movie, to the long take which he started experimenting with in Under Capricorn and perfected in Rope, to being the first to do the dolly zoom. The dolly zoom, a technique first created in Vertigo by second unit cameraman Erman Roberts at the behest of Hitchcock, essentially distorts perspective by moving a camera forward on a dolly or zooming out with the lens of the camera, or vice versa. It creates for the audience a strange visual appearance, where the background is either stretched or compressed depending on what the director does with the camera. Here in La Haine, the camera zooms in while the dolly moves backward. While in this scene in Steven Spielberg's E.T., the camera zooms out while the dolly moves forward. It can be used for all manner of reasons, like to show that the hallway to your kid's room, which has been taken over by a poltergeist from another dimension, is really long. Or it can be used more subtly to hint at a duplicitous proposition, like this famous scene from Goodfellas. Hitchcock also popularised the man on the run narrative, which goes back as far as 1927 to The Lodger, and was perfected in 1959 with North by Northwest. North by Northwest is also generally acknowledged as an honorary Bond film. The Bond movies of the 60s owe a large debt to it. And North by Northwest owes a very large debt to the 39 Steps, because in many ways it's an updated version of it. And while I'm talking about Man on the Run films, I'd also like to recommend Hitchcock's 1940 movie Foreign Correspondent, because it's really good. So what's the 39 Steps all about? Well, if you've seen North by Northwest, the narrative will seem quite familiar. Its story is simple enough. The film starts where it ends, in a London music hall theatre, where the film's hero, Richard Hannay, played by Robert Donat, is watching the seemingly inconsequential Mr. Memory display his skills when a shot is fired and all chaos breaks loose. In the madness, Hannay helps a woman who'll tell him all about a plot by foreign spies to steal vital British documents regarding a silent plane. Unfortunately, she'll be killed quite dramatically, and it'll be left up to Hannay to get to the truth.
Clear out, Hannay. They'll get you next.
While he attempts to get to the truth, he'll be accused of a murder he didn't commit. Meet a woman on a train. Escape the police. Meet a strange couple. Escape the police again. Find the bad guys. Get shot, but not die. Go to the police. Get arrested, but escape the police. Meet the woman from the train again. Get captured again with said woman, but this time by the bad guys. Escape one more time with the woman and be handcuffed for plotting complexity. Fall in love. Finally uncover the secret of the 39 steps and ensure the bad guy receives his deserved quietus. Maybe the narrative's not so simple. But that's what made Hitchcock so good. He was able to make seemingly complex narratives very easy to follow. In general, he wanted the audience to know what was going on, or at least know as much as the main protagonist, in order to build suspense and a sense of anticipation. In the 39 Steps, Hitchcock's visual style is also wonderfully simple and incredibly effective. Just look at this glorious long take you've been watching. It started with Hannay surrounded by people. We're not sure what's going to happen or whether he's in danger, and yet by the end of the scene, we can sense all is not well. It's just an extraordinary shot. I also love this early action sequence that takes place on the train to Scotland. The action is revealed in short, sharp shots that are beautifully cut together to build tension as Hannay evades his pursuers. There are no elaborate tracking shots or angles, just simple framing that lets the actors be the action. By not moving the camera, the audience also subconsciously feels the lack of space that's on the train. It's a fantastic sequence of shots that is gripping and a little humorous. Of course, if I didn't show this exquisite match cut, I'd be doing everybody a disservice. The scenes taken by the second unit in Glencoe are noteworthy for being the beginning of cinema's long love affair with the area. On his journey to find the truth, Hannay encounters a variety of characters and will have to negotiate some quite random situations. He'll go from sitting opposite some lingerie salesman on the train to Scotland to giving a rousing improvised political speech about the common man while in handcuffs.
I have the whole world against me, and those are things that no man or woman ought to feel. And I ask your candidate and all those who love their fellow men to set themselves resolutely to make this world a happier place to live in. A world where no nation plots against nation, where no neighbor plots against neighbor, where there is no persecution or hunting down, where everybody gets a square deal and a sporting chance, and where people try to help and not to hinder. A world from which suspicion and cruelty and fear have been forever banished. That is the sort of world I want. Is that the sort of world you want? Right. That's all I have to say. Good night.
The film's peppered with many of these vignettes, which help to engage the audience. But perhaps the most memorable meeting is with the jealous farmer John and his wife Margaret. They make for a strange pairing, and it's hard not to wonder how they got together, given that Margaret is from Glasgow, kind, and much younger than her suspicious and pious husband. At dinner, Margaret discovers that Hannay is on the run. Shocked, she exchanges glances with him. John mistakes these exchanges for something more romantic, which for the audience becomes a humorous misunderstanding. In the morning, when the police come knocking, John is quick to give Hannay up, but Margaret will help Hannay escape, much to her own misfortune. One can't help but wonder what kind of life Margaret has in store for herself on the Scottish Highlands, especially when we consider what happens to her when John learns of her kindness.
Where did you leave it?
In the breast pocket of my overcoat. It was hanging here.
John, I am afraid I gave it to that gentleman who was staying here that night.
Viewing this scene some 90 years later only makes Margaret's plight, seemingly stuck in an abusive marriage, which she can probably never escape from, even sadder. But that for me is what makes the movie so good. Long after the movie has ended, I'm still left wondering about the life of a character on the Scottish Highlands and her horrible marriage. Of course, this being a Hitchcock film, it would be remiss of me not to talk about his leading lady, Madeleine Carroll. For those of you unaware, Alfred Hitchcock liked blondes, and he liked them in his movies. Madeleine Carroll's Pamela is the first of a long line of blonde women Hitchcock would torment, exploit, fetishize, and make incredibly fascinating. Pamela and Hannay first meet in a way that really wouldn't fly today. To be honest, I'm pretty sure it didn't fly back then, as she rebukes, let's be clear here, her assaulter. He's a desperate man on the run, and he does apologize, but she gives him up very quickly to the police. Pamela first comes across as quite uptight, cold and prim, but given how they first met, it's kind of understandable. Over time, as she learns more about Hannay and proceeds to understand his motivations, she transforms before our eyes into a sassy, sexy woman with a sense of humour. According to Donat's biography, Hitchcock accidentally lost the key to the handcuffs at the first rehearsal, leaving them handcuffed for many hours. By the time the key had been found, Donat and Carroll had gotten quite used to each other, and it shows, because they have a wonderful rapport and make for a great couple. They both hit their roles out of the park. Donat in particular is in fine form, being persistent, charismatic, and a little cheeky. This scene in the hotel, as the two remove her stockings while handcuffed, strikes a relaxed and humorous tone. It's so simple, yet wonderfully effective at showing them warming to each other.
Here, hold this.
Oh, yes. Half a minute.
Thank you.
You mentioned it. Do you like your milk now?
No, thank you. I'll wait a little.
Despite the wonderful rapport between the two actors, to modern eyes it's still a bit difficult to watch Hannay manhandle Pamela in various scenes. His motivations are justified, so it's easy enough for the audience to go with it. However, it's a bit more difficult to believe that by the end of the movie, she would be in love with him. I've always let it slide because of the chemistry between the two actors. Pamela as an early Hitchcock blonde is still very much a work in progress. She's nothing like some of the cool, sophisticated and mysterious blondes of Hitchcock's later films. But she's not meek either. She speaks her mind, eventually extricates herself from Hannay, and discovers where the 39 steps can be found. The 39 steps isn't perfect. I've personally always had a problem with the way they kill off Annabella, but I'm willing to forgive that because it's just such a fun movie to watch. It also just has some extraordinary scenes, like the last one featuring Mr. Memory, who in his last breath recounts the 39 steps while chorus girls dance in the background. A major plot has been foiled, yet the world carries on oblivious, and we get to marvel at the genius of Alfred Hitchcock.
Where R represents the ratio of compression and gamma, seen in end elevation, the axis of the two line of cylinder, angle of 65 degrees. Dimensions of cylinders as follows. This device renders the engine completely silent. Am I right, sir?
Quite right, old chap.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm glad it's off my mind. At last,